attached to it, but let's catch up from the original sell trades that we'd been discussing. We can obviously understand this from the context of the various things we talked about this morning, looking at the directionality of the Aussie yens, the idea of the trend, the idea of reversals. And unfortunately now what's happening is that we've lost basically the overall shape of this, haven't we? We've lost the overall shape. The trend is bearish. That's why we were selling the top edges up here. The trend is starting to jam now, isn't it? It's starting to jam in. There's no change in trend. The trend stays bearish. So the one thing I would want to do is still sell higher highs. But the only problem is that the green relationship, whilst there is still leading, isn't leading by very much. Now, it was a little bit unfortunate because we had a great opportunity to sell into this one. The green line, now obviously this is a 1 minute chart, so I can't show you what did happen, but the green line actually got very, very close to taking out the previous green line as that price went higher. And that was something you would have been aware of just there. You would have seen that there was a divergence creeping into that higher high inside of a sell trend. So the first thing you're going to be looking at is, can I get short into that area? Now, obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. We can't obviously see what did happen. But if we look back now at this, if we look back at what else was going on at the same time, we're obviously very, very keen to explore things like the pension fund, the global macro lines. When we looked at the pension fund line, you could see that the sell was brilliant up here, absolutely spot on. When it came back up to the top edge, there was no way we could sell it against that short-term spike in the PF line. On the retest, however, the PF line was actually selling off. And that's a good outcome. I mean, a little bit higher, this would have been a perfect outcome, wouldn't it? Just that little bit more. Unfortunately, if we don't get it, we don't get it, right? The other challenge we had was that the cumulative delta was still bullish. It wasn't massively bullish, but it was still bullish. This was offset by something quite interesting. A zero liquidity reversal. A zero liquidity reversal. We've discussed this in classroom many times, this idea of if we see the big drive to zero, that there's going to be a reversal taking place. The zero liquidity reversal took place on this candle here. Now you may be saying, yeah, but that's coming into the big data, of course. Yes, it is. So you're expecting to see a market change if there's any big data that comes out that's perhaps a little bit more positive, the US dollar. So if we get some data coming out at 1:30 that's positive the dollar, what do you think is going to happen? Well, the dollar's going to improve. It's pretty obvious, right? So the PFs think the dollar is going to improve because that's what they've done on the trade, isn't it? The PFs have already improved that position. If we look at the carry trade, you see the carry trade was kind of running up, but it did start to run back down almost immediately after the data came out at 1:30. So what was the data? Was it good? Was it that good? Was it bad? Was it indifferent? What was the data? Well, let's go through the data numbers. So at 1:30 we had predominantly Canadian inflation, but we're not really that interested in the Canadian numbers. What we did get was we got the Empire State Manufacturing. The Empire State Manufacturing is traditionally a leading indicator. It leads the other ISM manufacturing, for example, the ISM numbers. And we can obviously look at that number and see that it's an incredibly bullish 34.3. A very, very big beat on the numbers. Well, if there's a very big beat on the numbers, then that's expected to lead the ISM manufacturing numbers going forward. One would imagine we would expect to see some dollar buyers coming in, wouldn't you? Well, the pension funds had already traded that dollar buy trade. They'd already started to work on that dollar buy trade. So when it pins back up again, you'd have been looking at that and saying, whilst I didn't like that original trade on the euro because of the dollar, I really, really like the amount of opportunity I'm getting to sell back in on the retest here. I love the opportunity I'm getting to sell back into the retest. And obviously, if you took the trade on that candle, which would obviously be a lot safer, or even on that candle, you're not giving away much room at the top edge, are you? You're not really giving away any room, but you're actually now getting the data that's now not been priced into the market. And sure enough, you've managed to get a very reasonable sell side swing away from that price. The bracket low was down here. You can already recognize where the bracket low was coming in from. We've got a pin rejection here, another pin rejection here. You know where the structure is. So we go from the bracket low to the bracket high, and you start making some measures. And you start understanding where the structure is. You start understanding where the halfback trade seller came from, which was right here. So now you can understand why there's going to be a profit take right here. Now you can understand why there's going to be some buyers coming in at that point to take some profits. So if you're in that short trade, if you've managed to join in with that short trade there, you've obviously used that bounce there to take a bit of money. And obviously you've got to try and make a new decision about whether this is a buy trade or a sell trade at this point. Now you're going to start making a decision. You want to look at that area. You want to look at your deltas. You want to look at the other numbers. And you want to try and figure out what you want to do around this area. If you think it's a good buy trade, you can obviously start considering the ideas. Now there's still, to me, in terms of the cumulative delta, there's no buy trade because it's still very heavy selling that's coming in. So there's no way you'd attempt to try and sell it, buy into this just at this point yet. So it's just simply, as far as the deltas are concerned, it's simply a profit take at this stage. It's pretty easy stuff, guys, when you add those elements, isn't it? When you think about adding in the structures and everything else that go along with it, it becomes really quite a sensible little process that you can start looking at, because you can obviously use the deltas now to say, well, I want to buy it, but you know what? These guys aren't letting me in. These guys are not interested in letting me in the book at this stage.